Hi, good morning everyone. The Dolls and I have got together because we wanted to give you an assembly. We know that you've been missing them since we've been gone. And today we want to talk to you a little bit about social justice. So what do we mean by social justice? Social justice is everyone's right to equal rights, equal opportunities, and to be treated without prejudice. Prejudice is an affected feeling, usually unfavourable, based on a preconceived evaluation that you have made about someone. When institutions such as governments, businesses, and people in power act in a way that discriminates against a person or a group of people, that is what we define as social injustice. So let's remind ourselves that to discriminate is to make a distinction between human beings based on race, class, religion, age, gender, or sexuality. So no doubt you guys will have seen in the news that there are protests and marches being covered daily from across the world. So this wave of protesting started in America following the death of George Floyd, who was killed by police whilst being arrested. So why do so many people care that he was killed? He was just an ordinary man. Yes, it's obviously always sad when a person loses their life, but why has this sparked global protesting? The Black Lives Matter movement is trying to draw attention to the fact that in this modern day and age, black people are still being subjected to racism, are being treated unfairly, and are being killed by the people that should be protecting them. What they're trying to make people understand is that had George Floyd been a white man, the police probably would not have acted in such a brutal way and a man would not have died. So this isn't really about condemning the police as a whole, that wouldn't make any sense. Thousands of police officers spend their working lives upholding the high moral beliefs that call them to their vocation. What the Black Lives Matter movement is trying to address is bringing an end to systematic racism that has allowed some officers to believe that their actions were justified. I'm going to pass you over to Mr. Kamara now, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the Black Lives Matter movement.
Hello everyone and welcome to our assembly on inequalities. Black Lives Matter, what is it all about? The anger, the messages people hold up, the protesting and the togetherness of people from all over the world. The majority of people would say that all lives matter. I do not disagree. However, I want you to listen to a very quick story just for a moment. Imagine your house is on fire. You call the fire brigade to put the fire out, and instead, when they come, they hose all the other houses except for your own. You're confused and you ask the question, why are you not hosing down my house? I'm the one that called you. My house is on fire. They simply reply to you and say, all houses matter. Deal with it. How do you feel if someone said that to you? Do you think that just for that moment, the attention should have been paid to you? The black community need to see change in society, just like the house on fire and the people fearing for their lives. Many people believe that the protests are singularly about George Floyd, the abuse of powers, unlawful interrogation, and the murder he suffered at the hands of the police. It is not any one of these things in a single context. However, George Floyd could have been my brother, my dad, my son, my husband. And it hurts to see people are being treated in such despicable and undignified ways. Black Lives Matter is about inequalities and hostile environments that have stood for many years, many decades, and through many generations of people. It's only now that more and more people are becoming aware of the injustices and preconceptions that we as black people face every day. I'd like to share a personal experience of mine. I was out and somebody asked where I'm from. I told them London. They repeated their question and extended it to my parents. And again, I repeated London. So they repeated their question again, to which I answered my grandparents were from Jamaica. His reply was, oh, wow, don't you speak very good English? I'm not sure what that was supposed to mean or why it would be assumed that I wouldn't speak very good English. Again, just a thought. We have more to offer than what is portrayed, and are far greater than what is shown. Our contributions to world development are constantly failed to be acknowledged. This is about education, change, the acceptance of our varied backgrounds as well as our skin colour, and the value of life. To treat people without prejudices, and for awareness to be raised of what people go through. Together as a community, we need to be willing to accept differences, be willing to understand, listen to people with pure ears, not guess that we know someone's situation or what they're going through, and above all, treat others as you would wish to be treated. Take care, stay safe.
Race and racism is a reality that so many of us grow up learning to just deal with. But if we ever hope to move past it, it can't just be on people of colour to deal with it. It's up to all of us, black, white, everyone, no matter how well-meaning we think we might be, to just do the honest, uncomfortable work of rooting it out. It starts with self-examination and listening to those whose lives are different from our own. It ends with justice, compassion and empathy that manifests in our lives and on our streets. As a white person living in the UK, it's easy to look at the Black Lives Matter movement and believe it doesn't affect you. Feel that it's not your place to comment or get involved. What's not so easy is to scroll past an innocent man being pinned to the floor, struggling and begging for his last breath. How can any human being, no matter your race, age, gender, not be deeply affected by that? I have been deeply affected by it. I acknowledge my white privilege, and instead of allowing it to put a muzzle on me, I will use it to speak up for what is right and what is wrong.
Hello everyone. In this part of the Assembly, I would like to talk to you about the power of peaceful protesting. If you've seen the news recently, you will have no doubt heard about the tragic death of George Floyd. This has led to multiple protests around the world. But why are people protesting? Well, first and foremost, because it was a tragic and unnecessary loss of life. But secondly, because people are hoping to bring about a change. Now, change is possible if you live in a democratic country, and the UK is one of those. What does it mean to live in a democracy? Well, ultimately, it means that it's power for the people, by the people. So you get to have a right to vote the political party into power that you think is going to do the best job of running the country. It also means that you get to hold those people to account. One of the ways that you can do that is by protesting. Now, what we've seen from history is that protesting is most powerful when multiple voices come together. If those multiple voices come together and create violence, that leads to a riot. Rioting is illegal, but protesting is not. And there are many examples in history where peaceful protesting has brought about a change. And I just want to share a couple of those with you today. Firstly, I want to remind you of Martin Luther King Jr. and his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And together with the civil rights movement, they brought about a change for the rights and the lives of black people living in America and around the world. I also want to remind you about Mahatma Gandhi, who walked 240 miles to the sea in a defiant act to make his own salt, and ultimately brought down the British Empire. Now, what do those two examples have in common? Well, they both started with an individual who wanted to make a change. They both started with very small numbers of people that grew and grew and grew, and ultimately had a major following. Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi, they both gave a voice to the voiceless. They both united people, and they both showed the incredible power that ordinary people can have. I also am reminded of one more example, and that is of Pride. Now, for many of you, you may know Pride as a festival, a celebration of the LGBT+ community. And why it absolutely is. It didn't start out like that. And in the UK, on the 1st of July 1972, 2,000 people marched in London in order to protest for equality for the LGBT+ community. And many, many, many years later, millions of people now join in that same march. And that is all to raise awareness. And while we may not be exactly where we need to be for the LGBT+ community, it has shown that when one person starts with an idea, they can make a difference. And ultimately, if you're doing it in a peaceful way, you are going to change things. This part of the assembly, I just want to leave you with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that."
Good afternoon everyone, Mr. Clune here, hope you're all well. I'm really proud to be part of this Black Lives Matters assembly. In the background, I hope you can hear Something Inside So Strong, our mental health anthem. We chose that anthem because of the powerful lyrics that were written by Labi Siffre in the 1980s after he'd watched a documentary showing white South African soldiers shooting black civilians. Now, at the time in South Africa, they had the most awful racist government. They used a system called apartheid, which basically meant keeping white people and black people apart. And in fact, they treated people of colour in the most awful, disrespectful and degrading way. It'd be wrong to say they were even classed as second-class citizens. Labi Siffre, like I say, wrote the song, and I'd just like to remind you of some of the lyrics that inspired us to use it as our mental health anthem. The higher you build your barriers, the taller I become. The more you refuse to hear my voice, the louder I will sing. Deny my place in time, you squander wealth that's mine. My light will shine so brightly, it will blind you. The positive defiance of those lyrics is just incredible. And not only can those lyrics be used in the fight against poor mental health, but also in the fight against inequality, so that we can, in the future, not judge people by the colour of the skin, by what they have done before, their background, their sexual orientation, but that we treat everyone with respect, with courtesy and dignity. Now, it might surprise some of you to know that I used to be in the Metropolitan Police. Here's me on my final day with the Commissioner, Sir Bernard Hogan Howe, at the Notting Hill Carnival. I loved my time in the Met and really was very proud of what I did and who I represented. The journey of the Metropolitan Police to where it is now, the diversity and the tolerance, has been an incredible journey. I work with some incredible people as well and look back with great pride. All I ask, please, is that you don't judge the police by what happened in America. The vast majority of police officers in Great Britain are honest, do a great job and are there to protect us and to run and deal with trouble when other people would walk away. Please show tolerance towards them. What I'd also like to do is just show you this picture that was in the papers, probably worldwide at the weekend. and it relates to an incident that happened in central London, a demonstration this weekend. How powerful that picture is, that that black man picked up that white man and took him away from any further danger. It filled my heart with warmth seeing that, and it gives me hope, and I hope all of us, gives us all hope for the future. I'd like to finish by saying that I was reading the paper yesterday and came across this quote from Jesse Owen, who was a black athlete who won gold medals in 1938 Olympics in Berlin. He said that the battles that count aren't the ones for gold medals. The struggles within yourself, the invisible, inevitable battles inside all of us, that's where it's at. Thank you.
Hi everyone, so I hope some of that was really interesting for you. I hope you've learnt something, I hope you've picked up something that you didn't know before. I hope that maybe something that someone has said to you has given you a desire to want to know more, and I hope really that that's the thing that comes from this assembly. So we had given you guys the opportunity, Year 7 definitely, and maybe some of the other year groups, to email in a question and ask us something about this matter, about Black Lives Matters, about social injustice that you wanted to know that you didn't really understand. All the dolls are going to try and answer a question for you, and hopefully we give you an answer that satisfies that curiosity. The question that I've been asked is, what does it feel like to be an ethnic minority in the UK? So, do I experience racism? Yes, definitely. I definitely feel like I am treated sometimes, or spoken to, or things are said to me that I would definitely class as a racist comment or a racist judgment because of the colour of my skin. Now, what doesn't happen is that I don't have people calling me names in the street, or we don't have things like segregation and stuff like that was real outlandish racism. What I do have and what I do experience is people making a snap decision, a snap judgment on me based on the colour of my skin. And they might feel like the things that they're saying are quite harmless, but actually it's not harmless to me. It makes me feel a certain type of way, and it brings my identity and my person into question. So quite often people will ask me, where am I from? And when I answer Wood Green, which is where I was born and raised, they say, but where are you really from? As if actually I'm not really a part of this country, I'm not really a part of this nation, I'm not really someone who belongs here. Or where are your parents from? Well, if I was a white person, would it really matter to you where I was from or where my parents were from? And we know that the white people in this country could have lots of different ethnicities or nationalities, and that seems to be less important. A lot of people don't walk up to a white person and one of the first things that they ask them is, where are you from? Because it doesn't really matter. But ethnic people are singled out by that one question, and they think that it's harmless, but actually it's not, because what you are doing when you ask a question that is almost questioning their validity or their identity, and that can be really uncomfortable for ethnic minorities. So maybe think about that. Think about, when you speak to someone who is of a different race to you, is that one of the first questions you're asking? And why are you asking that question? What is the importance behind that? It may be something that comes up further down the conversation. As you get to know someone, you might want to know a little bit more about them, and that's probably okay, but it doesn't need to be the one thing that stands out about that person. There are lots of things that happen in day-to-day life, but that's just one of the things that maybe I could easily highlight to you about the question of my ethnicity and my place in today's 2020 society, living as an ethnic minority in a local, in a small local community.
Hi guys, so answering the question, what is oppression and what are the root causes? The definition of oppression is really about unjust or cruel exercise of authority, particularly against a individual or a group of people. It's that feeling of pressing down on people, not physically, but mentally, creating a sense of heaviness or obstruction in the body or the mind. Oppression is a social act of placing severe restrictions on an individual, a group, or an institution. The root cause, well, the root cause can be difficult to define, but the root cause of oppression, we could say in the past, particularly because that's what we have to look at, is when people have felt threatened by other people. And because of that fear that they feel in themselves, they have decided to exert oppression so they can have all the power. They feel like they're being powerful by putting others down. We now know, and more people are beginning to realise now, that this is not the case and that this is not how you have to act in order to feel powerful. I hope that answered the question.
I don't think that things are bad here. Why question how things are now? Society is changing and evolving all the time. There are lots that we're discovering that changes how we live and behave. Just because things have been okay for some doesn't mean it's okay for all. We can change our values. It's up to all of us to decide to make a change, if it is necessary, as we are all responsible for our own actions and how we affect others. Some of my friends have different opinions about things. How do I know who is right? Our values and beliefs first and foremost come from our families, as we learn right from wrong from them. As we grow up, our values and beliefs can come from lots of other places too, like friends, what we learn, the media, our jobs. All of these things will shape how you think about things. You need to decide if you agree with the values and not just copy other people.
The question that I've been asked is, when should an individual take a stand against what he or she believes to be an injustice, and what are the most effective ways to do this? Well, that's a fantastic question. And actually, it's something that's really hard to do. It's really hard to take a stand and to put yourself out there and be the first person to say, I think that's wrong and I don't think that's the right way of doing something. But it also is the most important thing that you can do, because in the future, if you're ever going through a time or a situation and you need someone to stand up for you, there might not be anybody left to do that. So it is really important that if we all are fighting for equality, then that means it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that we're in a situation where things are equal for people. And I know it can be very easy for people from the white community to say, well, why should we get involved in Black Lives Matter? Because if we want to bring about a change where every race, every gender, every sexual orientation is treated equally, then it's everybody's responsibility. So what are the most effective ways to do this? Well, there are many different ways that you can go about it. Lobbying your government, getting in touch with your local MP, all of these things can bring about political change. But actually, what I want to encourage you to think about today is just to change your language, just to change your daily actions. You know, how many of you say things in a bantery way with your friends that actually aren't banter at all and actually are incredibly derogatory or offensive. We need you guys to be the role models about how we should be treating people and how we should not be judging people by the colour of their skin or their gender or their religion or anything at all. And I just want to leave you with a quote. I think it's most apt, certainly the most apt answer to this particular question. Mahatma Gandhi said, "You need to be the change that you want to see in the world." And that's really, really important. There's no point in all of the protesting and all of the anger if actually we're just going to continue with our lives as normal. We need to be that change.
The question, I see lots of things online, is everything I see true? Well, the point that I'm going to make, or I hope to make, is that it's important to have your own mind, to choose your path, and to look at things using your own values, your own beliefs, your own experiences, so that you can make qualified judgments and decisions as to how you lead your life. Is everything that you hear and see on social media or the media in general true? No, it isn't. There's a lot of good in media, whether it's governments, companies, organisations, individuals, football clubs or whoever. There's lots of really good news that comes from people. There's lots of really good and important crusades and lots of work that's going on to help people. But there are also people who use social media and wider media for their own gain and spread lies in order to make people feel either unhappy or to feel as if somehow they are less worthy, or to cause them problems with their mental health. What I'd ask, please, is that, like I say, you use your own value system. You critically think about what you hear. And if something's really sensational, whether really it is true or whether somebody is trying to push something to make life more difficult for other people, I trust that you can. I try to, I don't always get it right. The power of media is very, very important to understand. So please think and think independently and come to your own conclusions about what you feel the truth might be. Thank you.
Okay, so guys, we have tried our very best to answer your questions. We have tried our very best to explain to you, some of the more complicated things about social injustice, about racism, about discrimination, and about oppression. And hopefully, you're going to walk away today better armed with an understanding of what's going on. Now, Black Lives Matters. How does it relate to you? What can you do as a teenager living in the UK about something that feels like is happening in America? Well, the first thing is, it is happening in America, but it's happening here too. When we stand up, for other people, we're also standing up for ourselves. You can definitely be part of something in England and in the UK that will meet the needs and improve lives of other people, and that's a massive thing. Don't think that because you're a teenager you can't do that, and don't think that because we're in England we can't do that, because this is affecting the whole world. So my top tips for addressing this and making sure that you can do something about Black Lives Matters is, number one, do some research. There is so much information out there. You can Google Black Lives Matters, you can look at Amnesty International, you can look at reputable newspapers that signpost to websites and books and things like that. So go and do your research. Know about our history. Our history in terms of what happened with slavery is a really, really important one, but it's something that we don't often talk about because we think of that as something that happened in America, but it's not. It started here with us and has a really long, and complicated history. So go and do some research about that as well. Talk to your adults, whether that's your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, family, friends, your teachers. If you don't understand something, don't sit and be quiet. Be thirsty for knowledge. Go and find out what it is that you're not certain about, that you don't understand. You may have an opinion and you're not really sure if that's right or wrong, or where that's coming from. So talk to someone. a way that we're going to resolve this is by having those difficult conversations. You can do things as a family to address what's going on. So you can talk to your family about taking part in things that are happening online, whether that, you can do things in person, you can donate to charities, you can, start fundraisers and things like that. There's lots of things that you can do today, this week, this month, that will support the Black Lives Matter movement. Ultimately, I guess what I'm saying to you and what the dolls are saying to you is, don't sit back, challenge people, challenge each other, challenge yourself, and be the change.